Welcome to the 2021 Market Steer Show. Our judge this evening is Zach Bartenslogger. He is from Paris, Kentucky, and he is an Extension Associate for Youth Livestock Programs in the University of Kentucky. He has graduated from the University of Tennessee, Ohio State University, and Hutchinson Community College. He grew up on a cow-calf operation. Let's give a hand for our judge. Now entering the ring, Class 1 Beef Breeding, Aniston Payne. Bentley Holland, Enola Cade, and Laura Ham. Judges is your class.
Test. Well, good evening. Certainly a pleasure to be here in Lawrence County, and a really nice class to get started out here on our junior beef breeding show. And I think really a heifer that I can definitely get behind for the young lady to go ahead and start the class. And this one's a little slicker in terms of her hair coat, and maybe even at times maybe just looks a little bit different in the way that she's presented compared to some other cattle. But if we just talk about maternal function and talk about ones that in terms of skeleton and how they're supposed to be assembled at the ground, young lady, I think you've got a really nice heifer calf there. And I challenge those ringside to really study that one in terms of her spine, study her out of her hip and her hind leg, the set and curvatures that she has in her hock, and how deep-heeled and strong there she is when she gets out and takes a step as the young lady brings that heifer on out. Love that one in terms just the shape of her body, real feminine and maternal. I think that one's a nice one to go ahead and start the class. The brown tinge heifer that ends up in second obviously has the advantage in terms of growth and performance. That one's the most advanced in terms of her maturity pattern. That one in terms of her rib cage certainly reads really just opened up and robust and really wide in terms of her pin set. I think that one still has a feminine look to her. If I'm going to hit her, though, I think that she gets a little bit up in terms of her spine right there as she starts to go, and I think that's because she does want to drop her pins and come up underneath of herself. I still think she's functional, certainly still meets her stride. That's why she's able to go up in that second spot. Young man's heifer comes out in 3. I like that one a lot. And young man, I think that one in terms of balance, look, and eye appeal, that one is very, very good. The way that one silhouettes when he gets the heifer set up there on the profile. She's a little bit greener. She's a little bit more closed up. Obviously, from a performance standpoint, maybe just not there as compared to some other cattle at this stage. Young lady's heifer comes out next. I like that one a lot in terms of foot and bone and having some substance, and just in terms of muscle pattern. Certainly like those things. At the same time, that one gets just a little bit more up in terms of her pasterns. I'd like to set that one back in her knee, and I think likewise as she goes out of her rear tube, just a bit more comfortable with how she hits the ground. So I think a nice class of heifers. Congratulations to those exhibitors as they exit the ring.
Results from Class 1: in 4th place, Enola Cade; in 3rd place, Bentley Holland; in 2nd place, Laura Ham; and in 1st place, Aniston Payne. Now entering the ring, Class 2, Colt Lambert, Judge, this is your class. At this time, we'd like to thank our sponsors, TJ, Brittany, Kaysen, Hayden, and Graylin Blagg, Wade's Work and Western Wear, Lawrence County Cattlemen's Association, Randy Lambert and family, Doug, Ruth, John, and Grace Cade, Starlight 4-H Club, and Scotttown Farmers and Farmerettes. Let's give our sponsors a round of applause.
A nice single entry here for the young man, and I think a heifer that just in terms of front end quality, certainly like that heifer, and just the head shape that she presents and how she comes into her neck and the top side of her shoulder sits really high there and yet feminine and just really youthful in terms of her appearance. I think a heifer that has some body shape to her down low, especially in the center portion of her rib, a heifer that certainly meets her stride and functional in her build. Young man does a nice job. Congratulations to him as he exits the ring.
Results from Class 2. In first place, Colt Lambert. Now entering the ring, Class 3. Colt Lambert. Judge, this is your class.
Another single entry here for the young man, and the black and white heifer I think is one that just in terms of feature, in terms of foot and bone, and just having kind of that raw substance at their ground, certainly something to kind of get behind the heifer on. And I think one that in terms of still having plenty of rib shape and just upper and the mid rib, I think reads good. Maybe a heifer that gets just a little nickel up in terms of her flank and just a little harder there, but the young man does a really nice job in presenting that one and getting her put together. Congratulations to him as he exits the ring.
Now entering the ring, all first place class winners from Class 1, Aniston Payne. Class 2, Colt Lambert. And Class 3, Colt Lambert. Judge, this is your class. Second place winner from Class 1, please be on standby.
I think a nice lineup of females that stand out here within their respective classes, and I know that the numbers weren't huge, and so with some single entries, I'm just going to give you kind of a little bit of my thoughts on each one of them, especially now as they come out here with their contemporary group. And young ladies heifer that comes out of the first class, I think all of those things hold true that we talked about within that respective class, that one's very feminine in terms of the shape of her head. That one's very smooth and flat in terms of her shoulder blade, but yet even with that smoothness and that flatness there in her shoulder blade, she still comes back and starts to drop and fill in terms of her lower body. I like that one quite a bit in terms of her hip and hind leg set. I think that one in terms of being level from hooks to pins, that one in terms of the curve and bend there that she has in her hock and pastern, really allows her to get a long step coming out of her hip, and I think those things in particular really works to that heifer's advantage out here in the lineup. You know, if we're going to hit the heifer or kind of critique her in a place or two, I do think at times maybe that one gets a little bit more refined, especially in terms of her bone work and down at her foot. I think that one maybe at times too, she can maybe just overstretch a little bit there in her shoulder blade. I still think that she reads sound, she reads functional up front. That's not what I'm saying as far as her being a little bit stretched. I'm just saying that maybe she does want to pull out underneath of herself just a little bit. Young man's heifer that comes out of that second class, a single entry there, and that one has a lot of similarities in terms of just being really long and extended up front and kind of having a catching eye appeal type look in her front end. That one sits incredibly high right at the top side of her shoulder, and that one still comes back really opened up at the bottom side of her rib. That one probably has just a little more foot and bone to her and substance at the ground. That one too takes a long, comfortable stride and certainly flexible. If we're going to critique the heifer, I think that she probably needs pulled in just a little bit there in the point of her shoulder. I think that probably will help with some aesthetic there in terms of her forerib shape. I still think that she reads more than adequate there. It maybe just throws her off because of that shoulder blade maybe just coming out just a nickel more. Still a really nice heifer out of that second class. The black and white heifer, another single entry, and we talked about like the raw foot and bone that one has at the ground. Really good from a substance standpoint and just how powerful she is there in terms of foot shape. That heifer too has plenty of mid-rib and upper rib. We talked about that one probably needs to be just a little bit softer, especially for her maturity and kind of the pattern that she has. Needs to be a little softer in her forerib and flank line there. I think in general that one maybe we can just make her a little bit cleaner in terms of joint work and feminine, just make her a little bit more feminine in terms of her appearance. Still a nice heifer that has quite a few things in terms of just some advantages in terms of foot and bone and pieces we like in that heifer. I think in my eyes, you know, there's some cattle that maybe just have a little more feminine muscle shape to them, cattle that have just a little more drop and fill even at maybe an earlier stage of their maturity pattern. We can see how they'll come in and we can start to predict them as cows down the road. I'll go out, I'll show you which two I like the best. If you would, give all of our breeding exhibitors a nice round of applause on a job well done.
Your grand champion is Aniston Payne. Now entering the ring, Laura Ham. Your reserve champion is Colt Lambert. Now entering the ring, Class 1, Sophie Fout and Abigail Payne. Judge, this is your class.
pair of feeder steers here and to get things started off on our feeder show. And I do think there's a lot of give and take between the cattle, and obviously there's a difference in terms of size and weight and performance and kind of where they're at in terms of maturity pattern. And I guess for me, it just takes a little bit more time to maybe study and analyze where they're at this stage in the game in terms of skeletons, and maybe just try to predict a little bit of where they're going to be at. And the young lady's black and white calf, I'll preface with the fact that I do think in terms of his knee shape, he needs to be just shoved back a little bit more there, and his shoulder blade in general needs to come back more. I think that would strengthen him up right there in behind his shoulder coming out of his top line. But I read that one in terms of his foot shape to be better. I read that one in terms of his hip and his hind leg to be set in better to him as well. Not only more attractive there, but I also think just a little bit more useful in the way that he uses his hind leg. Clearly that calf in terms of muscle, his body shape reads good, plenty of just big practicality in his lower rib, and then just the feature of his foot and bone reads good. Just probably for me, if we're going to change him, we want to rearrange him right there in the front end of his skeleton. And I think the young lady's solid black steer really gives a run for that one's money in terms of just that one being really shapely, really expressive. I love that one in terms of his top shape and width that he comes out of how the backside of his shoulder and how expansive he is out of his hip and to the base of his skeleton. Study that one on the move, and there's some questions for me. I'm not sure that he necessarily counters the one that wins in terms of his front skeleton. That one in terms of his toe shape just needs to be more even in the spread there. That one needs to be just a little bit stronger in terms of his hawk and his passer and how he hits the ground. I think it's a good pair of feeder cattle. I think both the young ladies do a good job. Congratulations to them as they exit the ring.
Results from Class 1. In second place, Abigail Payne, and in first place, Sophie Fout. Now entering the ring, Class 2, Jacob K. Judge, this is your class. If you are not a parent or an exhibitor, you need to move away from the gate in the holding area. Beef breeding and feeder calves will compete for showmanship directly following the show.
Our only feeder heifer that we have, and the young man does a nice job with the silver heifer. And I think a real cool color pattern on her to kind of get your eye towards her, and just very appealing in terms of her presence. And the young man does a really nice job in terms of presenting the heifer, very fresh in terms of her hair coat and the way that he has her presented out here. Looks really good. And I think beyond that is that the heifer does read good in terms of her head and her neck shape and how she sits in the top side of her shoulder. I think the young man, when he gets her stopped and parked and kind of pulls that top back down in her, everything starts to match up pretty well. Maybe a heifer gets a little more refined in terms of her foot and bone, maybe gets just a little flatter at the base of her skeleton. Still, the young man does a very nice job. Congratulations to him as he exits the ring.
Now entering the ring, our first place winners. From Class 1, Sophie Fout. From Class 2, Jacob K. Judge, this is your class.
I think when we bring our heifer back out in contention from our steer division and for an overall feeder, and I think there's a lot of conversation to have between the cattle, and obviously where we just had a single entry within the feeder heifer division, I think we need to go ahead and maybe just talk about them and how they relate to each other out here in the drive. And the young lady's black and white steer, we talked about that one in terms of substance of foot and bone. We talked about that one in terms of his rib cage and reading really good there, not only having some drop and feel to him already at this stage in the game, but also just the way the shape of him reads in terms of his rib cage is very good, very expansive in terms of his top and how he comes out of his hip and down into his lower stifle, like the muscle shape and tone and texture that steer has. Like that one in terms of his hip and hind leg set, where we want to change the steers. We want to change him up front and just pull that knee back into him. I think that's going to help him in terms of bringing up his top line there right in behind his shoulder blade. Young man's heifer that stands behind there out of the feeder heifer division, we talked about that one, and just in terms of having an eye-catching type look to her, not only just kind of that color pattern you gravitate towards her, but also the head and the neck shape and the way that she plants in the top side of her shoulder. That one reads to have some drop and feel in her lower body. That one for me probably gets just a little bit too refined in terms of her foot and bone. That one also wants to flatten and deviate to the base of her skeleton. If we pick her apart from a structure standpoint, she probably picks up in terms of her lower pasterns and gets just a little bit shallower there in terms of how she hits the ground. But still, I think those are two good cattle that certainly have some usefulness, and how we try to project them out down the road and where they'll be for the young exhibitors if they continue with the projects. I certainly think they have relevancy. I'll go out, I'll show you the two that I like best. If you would, give our feeder calf exhibitors a nice round of applause.
Your grand champion feeder is Sophie Fout. Now entering the ring from Class 1, Abigail Payne. Your reserve feeder calf is Abigail Payne. We will now begin feeder and beef breeding showmanship. Now entering the ring, senior class, Abigail Payne, Laura Ham, Jacob Cade, and Enola Cade. Judge, this is your class.
I think a good lineup of showmen out here, and as we talk about for a senior showman, and I think we just need to go through and talk about each one of the exhibitors, and then I'll go out and kind of show you what I'm thinking with them. And we'll just start up front with the young lady that has a really nice steer there that she's presenting. And young lady does a really good job in terms of how she presents that calf, and in particular the front third of that calf. And she's able to get off the head of the calf and really utilize the front end that the steer has in terms of length up there, really grab his attention and kind of present that front end to a high degree. The young lady certainly understands in terms of mechanics of where she needs to be at in relation to me, and when we come around the calf in front of you and different things of that sort. The young lady makes sure to position her body where she needs to be at. Young lady at times I think can get maybe just a little bit tight and kind of choked up on the halter of that particular calf, but I think that's pretty nitpicky, and the young lady does a very good job, gets the calf to silhouette, really presents the calf to a high degree. Young lady behind her does a very good job as well, and I would just kind of reiterate some of the same things in terms of mechanics and fundamentals. The young lady certainly knows where she needs to position herself in relation to me and is observant of what's going on within the particular ring, and I think eye contact for the young lady is good and yet still has a calm and smooth demeanor about her, which I appreciate. Young lady at times may need to just twist her body ever so slightly, where maybe her belt buckle is kind of coming in just a little bit more to the point of her shoulder of that particular heifer, so that it maybe just looks a little bit more relaxed for you and your stance of how you're standing there with that particular calf. But yet I still think the young lady is very efficient in getting the calf set up. Young lady certainly understands the mechanics and fundamentals, making sure to get the cattle presented to a high degree. Young man that stands behind her does a nice job as well, and in particular, young man just has a very smooth and calm demeanor about himself. A young man certainly just remains relaxed as the class goes on and as the drive goes on out here. Young man, in terms of being the mechanics and making sure where I'm at, he's observant of what's going on, maybe a little bit slower at times of where exactly when I come around of maybe making that step, and I would just encourage you to continue to anticipate the next step that might be there for me. But young man does a very nice job in getting that heifer set up. Young lady behind him does a very good job as well, and just in terms of eye contact and intensity and focus, I would say she's bar none out here, and really that never wavers or breaks as she's continuing around the ring. No matter if she's leading the calf, if she's setting the calf up, she'll just never really break that stride. And so I really appreciate that in the young lady. At times, maybe we'll get just a little bit out with our show stick in front of the heifer, and maybe we need to pull that back and relax just a little bit more. And the same for yourself with your body, as I would tell you, at times we can come up just a little bit closer to the calf so that we're not maybe looking so far off from that particular heifer, especially where she's a little bit smaller. I think it would maybe just make that look just a little bit more natural. Young lady does a nice job in getting that calf set up. I think all the exhibitors do a very good job. I'll go out, I'll show you the order that I like them in. If you would, give all of our senior showmen a nice round of applause on a job well done.
Results from senior feeder and beef breeding showmanship: in fourth place, Jacob Cade; in third place, Enola Cade; in second place, Laura Ham; and in first place, Abigail Payne. Now entering the ring, junior showmanship class: Sophia Fout, Aniston Payne, Bentley Holland, and Colt Lambert. Judge, this is your class. After the junior feeder and beef breeding showmanship class, so this current class, we will be taking a 15-minute break before the market steer show.
I think a good group of junior showmen out here, and again, we'll just talk about them one by one as kind of how they stand right now. And the young lady in the pink shirt that's up there with the black and white steer does a very nice job. And in particular, I would say in terms of fundamentals and just basics of making sure that not only is she trying to walk her calf and put that calf into place exactly where for a feet placement standpoint where she wants him to be at, but also just in terms of how she positions her body away from the calf's head, and yet still was observant of where I'm at and trying to transition her body to give me different views of that particular steer. When I say observant, I think it means really for that mechanical piece of when I come around the calf or go behind or wherever I might be. At times, though, young lady, I think when you come around the ring and maybe when we're leading the calf, sometimes that intensity and that eye focus, eye contact maybe drifts away just a little bit. And so I would encourage you, while it is tough being the one that's up front and leading the pack there, it is important to still bring your eyes back to me and make sure you're aware of where I'm at within the ring. But still, young lady does a phenomenal job in getting that one set up and put into place, and just that ability to walk that calf into place very efficiently. She certainly does that very, very good. Young lady behind her does a very nice job, and I would say just in terms of a positive attitude and her eye contact, and you can see her there kind of cutting a grin on us, and that's a good thing, young lady. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I certainly appreciate that, and young lady is enjoying things out here. At times, young lady, your back feet will come up from underneath of you, and we maybe don't always get that calf put exactly into place where we want that particular heifer to be. Young lady, I think you do have a very nice heifer, and so I would encourage you when you go to walk that heifer and then maybe turn around and transition your body where you can get that heifer to maybe walk into place where you want that feet placement to be. Additionally, I think at times when we lead that heifer, don't be afraid to maybe drop the chain out of your other hand there and just lead with one hand and have your show stick in the other. I think you do a very nice job. I certainly like the positive attitude the young lady brings forth. Young man is all serious in business, and one thing in particular that I appreciate about the young man with the red shirt there is that when he's kind of locked in and focused on where I'm at, he's the first one when we ask him to lead that he's up and ready to go with that particular heifer, very, very driven and focused in what he's doing out here. Young man, at times, although I think you get your heifer set into place, at times her legs will come out from underneath of her. And so while your eye contact and your focus on me is good, make sure that we're still staying observant of what's going on underneath. And I think right now would be an opportunity where maybe I'd pull that back leg up that maybe is shot out from underneath of you there. I think even what you're doing right now, going to pull that heifer up in line where you've got some extra space, is an easy way to fix that. And young man does exactly that. I think he's very driven. I think he's very focused. And I think he does a great job. young man that stands behind him does an awesome job as well, and I can definitely tell that he knows where those feet need to go into place for that particular heifer. She's kind of tough to navigate out here because you're at an awkward situation where you've got the biggest calf out here, and then you get on the end and you're not exactly sure, do I make that rounded out or do I square it out, or where do I put that particular heifer at? And young man, I would tell you that if at all possible, I would try to keep it square here on the end, so that way you're not in a curve. I think when you do that, it makes the heifer want to bend her body, and I think it's a lot tougher for you to try to get that heifer's feet put into place where you want them. You still do it though, maybe not as quickly as some others out here, but you still do it. And then in terms of your eye contact and your focus, your ability to navigate the heifer after those feet are put into place, I think you're very, very good. I think you're very talented in what you do beyond that point of kind of getting her out of that curve. And so young man certainly needs commended from that standpoint. I think there's different ways that you can go here, and I think that's the fun part about juniors or when we have younger showmen out here is that we can see some of the fundamentals starting to come together, but maybe not every piece or component is put together yet. And so you just try to add up the most positives, and really it's just an opinion because I think all the young people do a very, very good job. I'll go out, I'll show you the order that I like them in. If you would give them a big round of applause. They're doing a great job out here.
In first place, Sophia Fout. In second place, Colt Lambert. In third place, Bentley Holland. And in fourth place, Aniston Payne. This now concludes our feeder and beef breeding showmanship. Now entering the ring, Class 1, Evan Clark, Addison Humphrey, and Ariana Halko. Judge, this is your class.
We get started here on our market steer show and a lightweight class that we have here, and 3 cattle that clearly are different in what they stand for, and yet I think there's probably 2 steers that just kind of surface up in terms of just body mass, and beyond that is steers that just are starting to read just a little bit more and fuller in terms of their fat indicators, steers that are just a little bit fuller over their 12th and 13th, and young lady steer that does that to win the class, I think takes that maybe one more step further in terms of still having shape down his back and still having some expression out of his hip and down into his lower stifle. Young lady steer that ends up second, young lady does a very good job, and maybe a steer that's not wanting to cooperate as much. Actually, I think he reads fuller there in his cod. You get your hands on him, he's a bit softer there to the touch. I don't think that he's necessarily 100% there yet, but I certainly think that one reads full in terms of some of his indicators. That one still, in terms of body shape, in terms of rib cage and pin width, like those things about the calf. He needs to be squarer out of his hip. He needs to be more coordinated in how he hits the ground. Still a steer that has plenty of just body shape and dimension. The black and white steer is kind of the question mark within the class, because he's the one that's really tall, long, and extended. He's the one that has some balanced look to him at times when he's standing still. The question is when he goes, that steer in terms of his shoulder blade gets far too vertical. He gets up in his knee and he gets just a little bit tighter in terms of his hock and pastern. That one down low, we've got to open him up more in terms of his lower rib cage, give him just a shot more in terms of true width and dimension. Still, I think a nice class of fat steers. Congratulations to those exhibitors as they exit the ring.
Results from Class 1. In third place, Evan Clark. In second place, Ariana Halco. And in first place, Addison Humphrey. Now entering the ring, Class 2. Jaden Humphrey. Gunnar Daniels. Gracie Daniels. And Tyler Walters. Judge, this is your class.
Good class of steers here, and I think there's two steers that kind of surface to the top of maybe just having a little extra punch to them, and maybe just in terms of their added balance and kind of look and design that they present from the side view. I think those are the two cattle that just soared up within the particular class. And, you know, there's trade-offs between those two, and if you like them actually flop between the two, I certainly wouldn't disagree with you, because I go back and forth, but ultimately I come back to the young lady silver steer, and I think that one, just in terms of how he reads in terms of his lower forerib and his lower rib cage, certainly just a little bit more open and expansive there. And I think likewise when you get on top of the cattle, he also reads that way too. I think the calf that still he can certainly have just a bit more on him in terms of cover, but maybe that steer in particular is getting just a little bit closer there. I think that calf in terms of feet and legs and being just a little heavier structured at the ground, being a bit more comfortable on how he goes and how he sets those front feet in terms of placement and relaxment, I like that one to go ahead and win. I really like the young man steer that ends up in second. I commended the young man in terms of just presentation on that particular calf. He's certainly been working with that one at home, and that one in terms of how it's dressed up and presented out here. Young man, you do a very good job and certainly need commended for that. I think a calf that just on a standstill and profile, that one is really aesthetic and really good in terms of balance and symmetry and how things line up in that particular calf. That one is ultra shapely in terms of his top shape. That one's really good in terms of just the turn out of his hip. That one in terms of yield grade, I think that one would have an advantage. To me, that one's too hollowed out down low. That one's too concave in terms of its rib cage. Watch him as he goes away. He flattens to the base of his skeleton. I want to make him just a little more relaxed in how he hits the ground. Young lady's calf that comes out next has been a really good converter in terms of feed and flesh. That one in terms of body shape certainly is putting some on in terms of some finish there. A calf that in terms of rib cage has some to him. Maybe one that needs to be just squared up in terms of his toe placement. That one probably needs just balanced up in terms of an aesthetic appeal. Young lady does a very good job though in presenting that calf and leading him around the ring. Young man's steer that comes out next is by far the heaviest finished calf that we've seen thus far, and from a quality grade perspective, if I'm going to call one to be more likely to roll into a choice-like grade, here's the steer that I would certainly say that for. Really covered in over his 12th and 13th, really deep in terms of his fat indicators, and you can even see that in terms of the shape of his hip there. It starts to compromise though as that one gets plainer in terms of his muscle pattern. That one just needs to be leaned up. That one needs to be squared up on both ends of his skeleton. Still a really nice class of market cattle. Congratulations to those exhibitors as they exit the ring.
Results from Class 2. In 4th place, Tyler Walters. In 3rd place, Jaden Humphrey. In 2nd place, Gunnar Daniels. And in 1st place, Gracie Daniels. Now entering the ring, Class 3. Kinsley Moore. Teddy Lynn Craft. And Abigail Payne. Judge, this is your class.
A good class, and there's 3 really good steers the whole way through. There's differences, and I don't think that there's one that's just fault-free, and I think if you admit that to yourself and then just try to find the ones that maybe add up the most positive things, then I think maybe you come to maybe a conclusion of what you want. And you know, initially the kind of slicker haired calf here is one that I really question him at times of how things maybe come out of him when he moves. And I don't think there's a perfect moving one in here. And young lady that ultimately kind of helps drive some of the decision of where I place him and run him up is because I still think he's acceptable in terms of functionality and how he hits the ground. Things come out of place a little bit where he gets weaker in his top and he gets rounder out of his hip. Ultimately, though, he still hits his stride. Ultimately, he's still heavy structured at the ground. Beyond that is that's the calf in terms of top shape. That's the calf in terms of true muscle, true dimension, the one that's going to rib out the largest eye. There's no question that that's him. He is explosive right in behind his shoulder blade. That one is so big over his loin edge, and yet is still very, very efficient in terms of how he's laid cover over his 12th and 13th. I like that calf as a tandem calf and how he goes to the rail. And yet the young lady, when she gets him stopped and propped up there on a profile, still has a balanced look. And so ultimately I like that one to win. There is undoubtedly the young lady that comes in second has done a great job at home and getting that one really fresh in terms of appearance. And from that one's hock up and from knee up on that particular calf, just on a standstill aesthetic profile. That one's the best within the class. That one is so good, and how he ties out of the top side of his shoulder, that one remains incredibly level down his top and out through his hip, and certainly counters the one that wins from that particular standpoint. That calf is really tentative when he hits the ground, and when I say really tentative, the young lady does a good job in trying to hide the flaw and make that one just slow down, and young lady, you need commended on that. That calf is just too up in terms of his pasterns. That one is too up in terms of his hock and just too vertical in terms of how he's placed down there on top of it. I think the calf's just a bit flatter in terms of his kind. Just doesn't have that true, raw, genuine shape that the one that wins the class. He's got some cover over him. He's got some cover over his 12th and 13th. You can see how it's coming into his brisket, how it's coming into his cod. Very highly presented. Young lady's done a great job at home and certainly needs commended. Very, very good calf, young lady. Congratulations to you. Young lady comes out next. Young lady, you get in a very, very tough class. And I tell you, just a kind of a meat and potatoes calf. I like that one a lot. That one's very shapely. That one's very expressive in terms of muscle pattern. That one gets a little bit staler in terms of his appearance for me. That one in terms of his head and his neck and his shoulder blades starts to open up just a little bit more. I think that one gets a little bit more open and just kind of raw on his rib cage there for me. And young lady, just from a balance perspective, he starts to maybe fall out of bed just a bit more. Still, I think 3 really good cattle. Young people do an excellent, excellent job. Congratulations to them as they exit the ring.
Results from Class 3. In third place, Abigail Payne. In second place, Kinsley Moore. And in first place, Teddy Lynn Craft. Now entering the ring, Class 4, Colt Lambert. And Hunter Scott. Judge, this is your class.
A good pair of cattle and different in terms of their kind, and ultimately there's some compromise that has to come between the two. And I guess to me, you just kind of go with gut reactions of how they come in the ring. And the young man's steer is certainly one that just in terms of shape, expression, and kind of that cutability factor that one will have once he hits the cooler, I think that one certainly wins the class from that standpoint. And then just one step further, I think the calf in terms of balance and look and symmetry, the way that one is correct in his top line and his hip and hind leg, I think that one's a sure candidate to go ahead and win. The Baldy calf that ends up in second actually counters him in terms of finish. That one's softer in over his rib cage. That one certainly is putting some right there in his tailbones and his cod, and you can see those indicators on that particular calf, how he give the quality a great advantage to that particular steer. That one to me starts to get just plainer in terms of his muscle shape. That one starts to get just a little bit, a bit more refined in terms of foot and bone and feature. Maybe that calf just needs to be shaped up just a little bit more, needs to be a bit more expressive in terms of his kind to give him a cutability type of an advantage on the rail. But still, two cattle that have different carcass merit to them. Young people do a very good job. Congratulations to them as they exit the ring.
Results from Class 4. In second place, Hunter Scott, and in first place, Colt Lambert. We need all first place class winners to the ring and all second place class winners to be on standby. Now entering the ring for our final drive, all first place class winner. From Class 1, Addison Humphrey. Class 2, Gracie Daniels. Class 3, Teddy Lynn Craft. And Class 4, Colt Lambert. Judge, this is your class.
She has to get the grain of reserves P to make sure that they didn't get fed drugs. I'm trying to stay out of the way of this thing. Not necessarily out of me, I was just saying.
All steer exhibitors need to be on standby for final drive.
I think it's been a really nice fat steer show, and I know the numbers maybe aren't there in comparison to years past, but I think the young people do a very good job. And, I just want to take a second. I know we still have showmanship left to go, but I really do appreciate the opportunity to come out and sort through not only livestock here this evening, but through your young people, and I really enjoy it. And it's something that is a passion of mine to be able to not only critically analyze animals, but then interact with youth. And I can tell you that, we've had maybe just a shorter go at it here this evening, but young people, I think, are very, very talented, and I think you've got a good group of young people here within the county. And I appreciate the opportunity, not only from the Lawrence County Fair Board, but also Rachel in the Extension Office that sent the invitation there to me. Again, like I mentioned, it is something that I really am passionate about, to be able to come out and do something like this. I don't have a big grand drive speech. I've never been somebody that, has a whole lot to tell you other than maybe what I see in the animals and the young people. But if I can tell you anything is that I love county fair season, and I really do, because of what it does right here in this arena right now. It's where it brings all these people together in a community, and it brings out a lot of passion too, and there's nothing wrong with that, of having passion. But at the end of the day, there's only going to be a couple winners, and there's going to be more losers than there is winners. And I think that's a great thing as well, is that we need to see that here in the show ring and what that instills. But I would tell you, no matter where you place, first, last, or indifferent, no matter how the young people place, and those spectators around ringside and those that have any kind of influence on the young people that have been in the ring, I think it's so important that we talk about it from a positive standpoint, a youth development standpoint, and that we cheer those on that win, and that those that maybe don't have as good a day, we still encourage those as well. And I know that's tough at times, because we become passionate, and our neighbors are not only some of our best friends, but our biggest competitors as well. And so I just encourage you during county fair season is to encourage those around you, applaud those around you, whether you like them or you don't like them, or you're indifferent about them. Make sure that you truly do give them a thumbs up and say congratulations, because I just think we need so much more of that in today's society, and especially in a program that promotes so much youth development. Last thing I'll leave you with, and I say this at every show that I judge, and I truly believe it, is that you're not going to agree with everything I did. And that's perfectly okay. I'm comfortable with the fact that you're not going to agree with me, and I hope that you don't agree with every single thing I did, because if you do, it's all cookie cutter and we don't have an opinion. At the end of the day, it's subjective, and I truly do believe that that's what makes this so much more fun, is that it can be a subjective type sport and that we have choices in what we like and preferences in what we like. The one thing that I strive for in each show that I judge, though, is to make sure that I give your young people an equal opportunity and give them their due credit and critically analyze the animal for what they are and leave it at that. And so I hope that when you walk away, whether you like how it got placed or you don't like how it got placed, you can at least say, yep, I think that guy gave my kid a fair shot, and that's what I hope for. We're not going to go back through the steers again. I think you can probably tell from where I talked about them, there's cattle that I think have some merit to them, and certainly in different areas, but I think there's quality cattle that we saw today that just really need to sort up. Not every one of them's a cookie cutter, and you're going to see that as we go down the line. I'm charged with to find the best 10 out here. I'm going to show you the 10 that I like best in that order. If you would, give the show staff, give the exhibitors, give everybody that's a part of this a nice round of applause.
Your grand champion market steer is Teddy Lynn Kraft. Now entering the ring, Kinsley Moore. Your reserve champion market steer is Kinsley Moore. Now entering the ring, Abigail Payne.
He was completely on the ground. Yeah.
Your third overall is Abigail Payne.
Yeah. Give it here.
Your fourth overall is Colt Lambert. Now entering the ring, Hunter Scott. Your fifth overall is Gracie Daniels. Now entering the ring, Gunnar Daniels. Your 6th overall is Hunter Scott. Your 7th overall is Gunnar Daniels. Now entering the ring, Jaden Humphrey.
It looks safe over here with you girls. I'm coming over.
They just do this to me.
Your 7th overall is Addison Humphrey.
Trying to catch a slobber.
Now entering the ring, Ariana Halko. Your 9th place is Ariana Halko. Now entering the ring, Evan Clark. Your 10th overall is Evan Clark. Results from the Market Steer Show. In 10th place, Evan Clark. In 9th place, Ariana Halko. In 8th place, Addison Humphrey. In 7th place, Gunnar Daniels. In 6th place, Hunter Scott. In 5th place, Gracie Daniels. In 4th place, Colt Lambert. In 3rd place, Abigail Payne. Your reserve champion, Market Steer, is Kinsley Moore, and your grand champion, Market Steer, is Teddy Landcraft. Class 1, Market Steer Showmanship to the holding area, Class 1. Your Showmanship, Class 1. Now entering the ring, Tyler Walters. Gracie Daniels. And Teddy Landcraft. Judge, this is your class.
We've got 2 heats of showmanship here in our senior division, and 2 young ladies that I pull out in the center of the ring. I'll ask to come back for our final drive and save some of my comments for them at that time. I talked to the young man there on the rail, and we talked about maybe just some posture in terms of the front end on that calf and where to put it in relation to the rest of that calf's body. We talked about some eye contact. We talked about in terms of fundamentals, in terms of his transitions and how he positions his body. He does a very good job with that. I think all the young people do a very good job. If you would, give them a nice round of applause as they exit the ring.
entering the ring, Senior Showmanship, Class 2, Ariana Halko, Evan Clark, and Abigail Payne. Judge, this is your clap.
A good class of showmen here, and I think three individuals that all have some differences in the way that they set cattle up and the way that they get to that kind of point. And the young lady that's going to lead us off here, I think just in terms of her body position on that calf's front end, I think excels the class from that standpoint. I think the young lady tries to get that calf to kind of walk into place and plant his feet exactly where she wants him to. At times, young lady, back feet will come out from underneath of you kind of at that last go round, and I would caution you, I think that you need to make sure that we get those feet squared back up underneath. So I think the young lady does a very good job in terms of mechanics and understanding of where I'm at in the ring. Congratulations to her. Young man that comes out next, I think gives her a run for her money, and actually in terms of eye contact, I think you're one of the best within the group, young man, and I really appreciate that, and I really applaud you in terms of just your focus and intensity. I think at times that calf just makes it tougher for you to get him set up, and it really is not a factor of so much that you don't know what you're doing. It's a factor of that calf just won't let you do it, and I really hate that for you, young man, and it makes it tough in trying to get maybe around the ring and where you've got to position yourself. But young man, I still think you do a good job. Young lady, the steer's wanting to give you a fit, and I don't think that that's necessarily your issue or your fault. The calf is just kind of acting up out here, but young lady sticks with that calf, and I tell you what, just in terms of her eye contact and focus, I think she's like the young man in that regard. Certainly just kind of upbeat and energetic in terms of her eye contact and the way that she kind of presents a smile and is enjoying it out here. I just think the calf doesn't want to cooperate. The calf doesn't want to set into place. I think three good showmen. Congratulations to them.
Results from Class 2. In third place, Ariana Halko. In second place, Evan Clark. And in first place, Abigail Payne. Now entering the ring, for senior steer showman, Gracie Daniels, Teddy Lynn Craft, and Abigail Payne. Judge, this is your class.
A good group of senior showmen out here, and my apologies in the sense that in that first class I didn't have them ranked, and more so I had those that I wanted to come back out here for our final drive, and I just misunderstood in terms of how we need to have them placed rather than just placing them out here for our final go round. So again, my apologies, and that's kind of why it maybe looks a little bit different out here compared to what you might have been used to there in the past. And so we want to give the two young ladies their due credit that came out of that respective class because they are ultra competitive, and I think there's very competitive amongst each other, and even with the young lady that comes out of that second class. To talk about the young lady with the silver steer, I think a young lady is, in terms of eye contact, incredibly good, and when you come in the ring you instantly gravitate towards me and you want me to continue to watch you, and I really appreciate that. Your focus, your contact, all of those things are good. Young lady, you try to get that calf put into place, and I would tell you you're relatively quick in doing so. I think you could be a step quicker if you'll go ahead and transition your body and start walking backwards into place and have that calf anticipating what step or where you're going to have that feet placed. Young lady, very good in terms of mechanics of where I'm at and when I come around the calf and making sure I get plenty of open space in front of the calf, and when I go around to the side, yet you give me a 3/4 angle. I really appreciate that. I think you're ultra competitive. Young lady, steer wants to lay down. I certainly understand. He's pretty tired. He's had a long day, I'm more than sure. Young lady does a very good job. And in terms of her just maybe being a little bit more quicker and efficient in terms of getting cattle set up, I really appreciate the fact that she'll allow herself to kind of transition and to take a step backwards there and anticipate where that calf is going to place a foot. Young lady does a good job in making sure that those feet stay square and yet pull a hind leg up underneath to add some extra body and feel in that particular steer. Young lady, I think, does a good job in trying to understand that that calf does pull up in his top line from time to time, and so she'll pull that back down in him. She doesn't make it too extreme, and I appreciate that. Young lady, I don't think you're as quick as the young lady in the green shirt in terms of your mechanics of when I come around the calf. I do think that you can open up just a little quicker. I think you can kind of give me another 3/4 view just a bit quicker. I still think you're very talented, as is all the individuals within the particular group. Young lady that comes out of that second class, so we talked about her just in terms of eye contact. We talked about her of wanting to get that calf put into place, and more times than not, she does get that calf put into place, but often to what the steer's doing now is he'll want to kick a leg out from underneath of the young lady. She's doing a much better job in this go around of making sure that she's understanding that and trying to correct it as she is right now. I think the young lady's incredibly talented, as are all three of the individuals out here. I think there's personal preference. It always comes down to showmanship, and you have to kind of side with, what you feel comfortable with and what you're maybe willing to forgive here or there and what you really see in those individuals. I'll go out. I'll show you the one that I like best in the group. If you would, give all of our senior showmen a nice round of applause.
Your senior steer showman and Class 1 winner is Teddy Lynn Kraft. We will now begin Junior Showmanship Class 1. Now entering the ring, Jaden Humphrey. Kinsley Moore. Gunnar Daniels. And Hunter Scott. Judge, this is your class.
A good group of junior showmen out here, and I think the young lady that ultimately wins the class does so relatively easy for me. And young lady, if I'm going to tell you just a real quick critique for you, is I do think when you're leading that calf around that I think it would look just a little more natural if you'd let that halter there that's in the other side of your hand that you're holding the show stick with just kind of dangle down there. I think would make it just look a little more natural, maybe not so splayed out up front for you and how you're leading the calf. But in terms of getting that one set up, quick, concise, do that in a very, very good fashion. Young lady, certainly in terms of positioning your body, you'll open up, allow me to see the front end of the calf, but yet still a three-quarter view. Young lady does a very nice job. Congratulations to her. I think it's really close between 2 and 3, and so if you want to switch those two young people, I think you certainly can. Young man, you get in a tight spot here around the corner, and your calf really wants to squirm on you, and so I give you a second look. And I do think that in terms of maybe getting the calf just to walk into place a little bit quicker, I think, young man, you do that. And I really appreciate the fact that you are trying to allow yourself to position, walk back, get the calf and where you want it in terms of those feet and legs, get the hind leg up underneath there, add some extra body. Young man, from time to time, though, that calf is still squirming, and so that does make it a little bit tougher on you out here. Still, I think you do a really good job. Young man, in third, I think you can be just as easily second, and I think in a given day and maybe a different day, certainly you have the ability to be first out here as well, because I think in terms of eye contact, in terms of focus and opening up on the calf and giving me three-quarter views, young man, I think you do a very good job from that standpoint. Your calf just naturally wants to maybe splay out just a little bit more and maybe not allow himself to kind of come back underneath and give a hind leg underneath, and so it makes it tougher on you. That calf wants to push out from underneath, and so I think it just it does become a little bit of a detriment there for you, but young man does a good job. Needs commended on how he's taking care of that calf at home and prepared for the show. Young lady does a really good job too, and I think just in terms of her eye contact and focus, very good job from that standpoint. Young lady, I would encourage you. I think that calf just needs to be squarer up underneath of himself when you go to set him up. Young lady, I think we can even take that show stick and pull his top line back down in him. So I think all 4 young people do a very good job. Congratulations to them as they exit the ring.
Results from junior class 1. In 4th place, Jaden Humphrey. In 3rd place, Gunnar Daniels. In 2nd place, Hunter Scott. And in 1st place, Kinsley Moore. Now entering the ring, junior showmanship class 2. Addison Humphrey. And Colt Lambert. Judge, this is your class.
A pair of young people out here that I think do a really good job, and a young lady is just a trooper out here with a calf that knows that he can push her around quite a bit, and yet she still holds on to that guy as she goes around the ring, and so I really appreciate that about the young lady. Young lady that I think is doing a good job in terms of eye contact and focus. We talked a little bit there about how we're going to handle our show stick and where we're going to try to put that on that calf to maybe try to get that one stopped and put together. Young lady would talk about too about the front end posture on that particular steer and how we maybe want to pull those front feet back into the calf. Young man that stands behind her does a really good job in terms of getting that calf square and put it together there at the ground in terms of feet and legs and putting it into place. Maybe a little bit slower at times and maybe the transitions of what he does. Still, I think he has really good eye contact out here. Young man will be your class winner. Young lady will be second. Congratulations to them both as they exit the ring.
Results from junior class 2. In 2nd place, Addison Humphrey, and in 1st place, Colt Lambert. Now entering the ring, 1st place winners from each class. From class 1, Kinsley Moore. From class 2, Colt Lambert. Judge, this is your class.
A pair of young people that are doing a really good job out here in our junior division. And again, I'll just tell you real briefly and what I see in them in comparison to each other. Young man, again, I reiterate the fact that I think in terms of getting feet and legs set up, you certainly know where you want to put those feet. I think you do so. I think at times it maybe takes like one extra step or maybe one extra just hesitation for you, maybe to get those feet put into place. And I do encourage you that I think maybe transitioning in terms of when you go to set that calf into place, shifting your body, shifting your focus of how you're going to get that calf and anticipate his next step would really help out and maybe make things where you only have to pull one foot rather than maybe poking around when you finally do get him stopped and put where you want him. Young lady, I think maybe counters in that particular sense. If she is anticipating the next step, she is anticipating where that calf is going to plant his foot. And so if anything, maybe she just has to touch one time on that particular calf's foot to get him exactly where she wants him. I think the young lady is calm, cool, and collected in her demeanor. I think both of the young people do a very good job out here. I'll show you your champion, but before I do, please give the show staff, county fair, everyone involved, those that have worked the ring, a big round of applause. It's been fun.
Your junior steer showmanship winner is Kinsley Moore. This concludes our beef show.